When we go through trauma, our brains don't function like they normally do. We shift into survival mode. Our brain directs all our mental and physical energy towards dealing with the immediate threat until it's resolved. But it's not only our brains that remember our traumas. Today, I want to discuss how unprocessed trauma can also get stuck or stored in our bodies and share some safe and effective ways of releasing these traumatic experiences from our body. Hello, I'm neuroscientist Dr. Ben Webb, sharing brain advice for a mentally healthy and happy midlife. Welcome to episode 77 of Better Brain, Better You. Hey, how are you doing? And thank you so much for joining me for today's episode on how trauma gets stored in your body. So when a child experiences trauma, like neglect and abuse early in life, it can have a devastating impact on their physical, mental, and emotional development. But we now know that with the right experiences, at the right time, a young person can actually heal from their emotional pain caused by the trauma and live a healthy and happy life. So if you'd like to learn how to help a young person heal from early trauma, our resident clinical psychologist, Dr. Zoe Webb, has released a free-to-watch video workshop, Rewiring the Teenage Brain to Heal Trauma. In this workshop, Dr. Webb will discuss how a child's brain responds to stress, how a child's brain changes in response to adverse childhood experiences, and how carers and parents can harness the capacity of a young person's brain to rewire itself to heal their emotional pain. So you can watch this video workshop at ologyonlinecourses.com/heal trauma. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/heal trauma. So 1 in 3 adults in the UK have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. And while trauma is a word we often associate with war, a violent attack, rape, abuse and neglect, or even near-death experiences, the reality is there are a range of other less obvious experiences that can be traumatic and that have the potential to seriously disrupt our lives. So things like dealing with a serious illness in yourself or a family member, the death of someone close, the breakup of a significant relationship, or even losing a job or leaving a community that's very important to you can be traumatic. Trauma isn't something that has to be one specific event either. Micro-traumas, like chronic stress or more mildly traumatic things that accumulate over many years, can amount to the same as one big trauma. The problem, of course, is that the negative psychological and physical effects of any type of trauma don't always resolve on their own and may extend far beyond the actual event. So post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental illness that can develop after a person experiences or witnesses a terrifying or life-threatening event, including any of those that I've already mentioned, which may last the remainder of someone's life if left untreated. So what's actually happening in the body during and after a traumatic experience? Well, the primary response we often have to trauma is to fight or flight. The heart beats faster, blood pressure goes up, big muscles get tense and ready to run or fight. Digestion slows down, and the other reaction we have, often when the trauma is overwhelming and inescapable, as might be the case with a rape or an ongoing abusive relationship, is to freeze or go into a kind of detached state. And during these responses, which are mediated by the autonomic nervous system, areas of the brain responsible for fear, anger, and emotion, particularly the amygdala, become much more active, while areas in the frontal part of the brain responsible for self-awareness, thoughtful decision-making, human connection and compassion become much less active. So in some cases, a traumatic event doesn't cause prolonged suffering. A sort of healthy resolution of a traumatic event would be that you do experience the initial stress response and you are shaken up, but after about a month, the anxiety and recollections of the event diminish significantly or go away. But others can get stuck in these fight, flight, or freeze responses, even when they're not consciously thinking about the traumatic event. And trauma can sort of shock the autonomic nervous system into a state of hyperarousal and hypervigilance. Like you're in that peak moment in a horror movie when the music is accelerated and you know something bad is about to happen. So unprocessed trauma actually becomes stuck or stored in the body, especially when thoughts of the traumatic event are so upsetting and uncomfortable that they can get buried as a self-preservation mechanism. And when these traumatic thoughts and memories remain unspeakable or unthinkable for too long, they often impede our brain's natural process of recovery after trauma. They become stuck points that inhibit the mental reintegration that is needed for healing to occur. And symptoms of traumatic stress can become present as genuine physical complaints, as opposed to complaints of emotional distress, when the psychological nature of the symptoms is too scary or daunting to accept or even considered taboo by society. So in this way, physical manifestations of trauma very much exist in our bodies, even when we may not be consciously thinking about the actual trauma. Everything that happens to us emotionally or psychologically happens to our bodies as well. If you look at people who go into fight, flight, or freeze responses, just look at the way they hold their bodies. They're tense, they're tight. Their whole body is set up to protect themselves from a predator. This tension is connected with the traumatic experience in ways we don't yet completely understand. But there isn't just one aspect to our memory of trauma. There's the memory stored in our brain, but when we experience trauma, we also experience it in our body. There's a feeling associated with it, and in some ways this feeling may interrupt our factual recall of the event. There are two aspects of memory, and the one that's in the body that people tend to store actually gets less attention. So when trauma becomes stored or stuck, how can it be released? Well, trauma-focused therapies that may be particularly helpful in releasing trauma stored in the body include things like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, EMDR, and SomaticExperiencing, both of which work with trauma stored in the body and don't simply patch over a traumatic experience or your thoughts and feelings about it verbally, which actually can be ineffective and sometimes even re-traumatizing. So with the EMDR, physicians guide patients through guided eye movements while asking them to recall certain events and then shifting their thoughts to more pleasant events, which is meant to dampen the power of past traumas. And EMDR has been shown to significantly decrease activity in your amygdala and hippocampus. So you're basically taking this stress response that is always on and quietening it down. SomaticExperiencing, that was developed by psychologist Peter Levine, is a body-oriented therapy that assesses whether a person is stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze response and provides tools to resolve these physiological states. So both EMDR and SomaticExperiencing have been shown in studies to be really beneficial for the treatment of trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. So physical manifestations of trauma very much do exist in our bodies, even when we may not be consciously thinking about them. And this trauma gets stored and can get stuck. And depending on the severity of the trauma, it may need to be carefully unraveled and processed with the help of a therapist and a trauma-focused therapy such as EMDR or SomaticExperiencing. So I hope today's episode has helped you to appreciate the way in which trauma not only gets tied into our brain's memory, but also into our bodies as well. So don't forget, you can watch Dr. Zoe Webb's excellent video workshop on rewiring the teenage brain to heal from trauma at ologyonlinecourses.com/heal trauma. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/heal trauma. So thanks so much for spending time with me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.